Tonight on CBC Vancouver News. Loose wolves. Several of the animals get out of the Greater Vancouver Zoo, and officials think it may have been deliberate.
My son would be alive if there was safe supply.
10,000 people killed in 6 years. The staggering, unending death toll from poison drugs in BC.
Scary. It's embarrassing.
And nowhere to go. More people in Vernon are living in RVs on city streets, and that's drawing more complaints.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening, I'm Dan Burritt. Thanks for joining us. Anita is away tonight. We start in Aldergrove, where several wolves got loose from the Greater Vancouver Zoo. And zoo officials claim it may have been deliberate. The CBC's Ali Patarge joins us from the zoo in Aldergrove. Ali, any idea how many wolves got out?
We don't know yet, Dan. The ministry was told only one was on the loose. It all began this morning when the zoo says a number of wolves were found outside their enclosure. It says most of the loose animals have been found and brought back, but one is still missing and a small group is not back in their enclosure. The zoo called in conservation officers and Langley RCMP to help them, and it says Mounties are looking into what appears to be unlawful entry and vandalism. Essentially, they claim someone or something intentionally let the wolves out. The zoo stresses the public is not in danger, but is asking anyone who sees a wolf to contact it, Langley RCMP, or conservation officers. The Environment Ministry recommends you to keep your distance if you see one. Now, the zoo has been closed for the entire day, but I did speak to one worker on site who says she works for education, and she gave me this card, which just goes to a generic phone line. Now, the zoo says it has 9 gray wolves and 6 cubs at last check.
Ali, this release has animal activists worried as well. What can you tell us about that?
Well, the Vancouver Humane Society tells me it's very concerned not just for the safety of the people who encounter the wolf, but also for the safety of the animal itself. So it raised alarms several times about past incidents, like a jaguar biting an employee last winter and a bear biting a child. They say a lot of it has to do with small enclosures the animals are kept in, and they claim the zoo is not equipped at all to deal with complex social behaviors of these animals in their instincts to hunt, climb, and roam. Now, they hope the wolf on the loose is dealt with as humanely as possible, but they are calling on changes from the province on how animals are kept in captivity. Dan?
Ali Patarge reporting from the Greater Vancouver Zoo in Aldergrove tonight. It has been a week since the city of Vancouver ordered the removal of tents on parts of the downtown east side along Hastings Street. But a score of tents remain on sidewalks. As Benit Brate shows us, the move comes amid more threats against people living on the streets.
Most of it's gone now.
Jessica Anuroth's shelter feels less like home since the cleanup was ordered.
Well, they took most of my things that wasn't on wheels.
Now she worries about finding another place to live.
Where else do they want us to go?
Just wonder about your strength of community when people don't have a space to go to.
A week later, much of Hastings Street remains covered with makeshift homes. Last week, city crews were on hand as some tents came down, forcing dozens of people to move.
There's not really anywhere people can go.
This social services agency says at least 1 or 2 people are showing up at their door every day looking for housing.
But if the programs are full, the programs are full.
Elizabeth Barnett says she's angered with the lack of plans for housing.
What I've noticed is more people in the alleys, in darker corners, people on their own more than I've seen before.
Some are also concerned those without homes will be attacked. Flyers threatening to torch tents and belongings on sidewalks were found on Monday. It also vows to burn down the Insight supervised injection site if homeless people don't move. It's unclear who printed the flyers, but police say they're trying to find them.
And people are just trying to survive. They're running scared. They don't know where to go.
Another major concern is displacing people who may use drugs alone.
They're going to be in alleyways using alone and increasing exponentially the chance of death.
A loss of community is also frustrating.
So don't rip them apart and put them somewhere where they're not with their people. They need to be with their people and their community and their family.
The city says officials are speaking with BC Housing every day to advocate for more homes and shelter needs. But BC Housing says it does not have the space to provide shelter for people who are being displaced. With no clear solution in sight, community workers say it's important to plan with human dignity in mind, including more collaboration with mental health counselors and social workers.
Can't deprive people of this community they've built with no other option. It's illogical.
She says compassion can also go a long way as people like Jessica hold out hope for a new home. Benit Brach, CBC News, Vancouver.
10,000 people. That is the number of victims BC's coroner says have been killed by toxic drugs since this province declared a public health emergency 6 years ago. Renee Filipponi brings us some of the faces of this ongoing tragedy and the ongoing calls for more action.
What's your son's name?
Liam.
Liam, nice.
Each sash is wrapped with care by someone grieving the loss of a loved one to tainted drugs in Vancouver. Part of a campaign to raise awareness about the crisis.
There's actually people behind the numbers, right? Fathers, sons, children.
Vicky Cartwright's son Harley died 18 months ago. He was 31.
My son would be alive if there was safe supply. I know there's lots of political, bureaucratic stuff about that right now, but we've got to start at some point.
The new report from the BC Coroner Service says on average 6 people are dying every day.
And anybody who uses any drugs in this province that they purchase off the illicit market is at risk.
Today, a sobering number. 10,000 people have died since the public health emergency was declared in 2016. 1,000 of them in the first 6 months of this year alone. And the problem goes far beyond Vancouver's downtown Eastside.
In urban and suburban neighborhoods and from all people of all walks of life.
In a statement, the Provincial Minister of Mental Health and Addiction said, "We are expanding treatment and recovery options with more substance use beds." And BC is leading the country on decriminalization and prescribed safer supply. But it's not happening fast enough for people on the front lines.
For years, it's been a little bit more than an incremental changes, pilot project here, a few treatment beds there. Nothing substantial has changed to our laws, to our policies, and it's leading to so many more deaths.
Including Janet Milbrat's son.
We talked about other kids overdosing or getting the fentanyl, and I said, don't you ever do that to me. That's kind of what I was thinking of as I hung that. It's like, I can't believe this is happening to our family, to us, and to him. It's happened to him.
Liam died of an overdose 3 months ago today. Renee Filipponi, CBC News, Vancouver.
You have fewer options for emergency health care on the Lower Mainland right now. Starting today, UBC Hospital's emergency department will be temporarily adjusting its hours and closing 2 hours early. As the CBC's Zara Premji explains, it stems from staffing shortages, though officials say it will help address health worker burnout.
There were actually physicians in tears saying, I can't do this anymore. I'm going to have to quit if we don't change this.
A difficult decision made in a difficult situation.
They are struggling with this, looking after myself and looking after my patients, this conundrum. And I think that this was not a decision that they took lightly.
But one in the end, the health authority says it had no choice but to make.
In some cases, physicians were supposed to who were supposed to leave a shift at midnight were actually leaving at 5 a.m.
Doctors are burning out. To cope, the hospital will close its doors 2 hours early, no longer staying open from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m., instead closing at 8 p.m. Vancouver Coastal Health says it's temporary.
You haven't got the staff, it's impossible.
Are you scared for yourself that you may need services and won't be able to get them?
Absolutely.
Dr. Grafstein says every effort is dedicated to solving the crisis of severe staffing shortages.
By cutting back the hours, we're actually preserving the health of the physicians.
And health officials know long-term solutions are key.
This isn't, we're having a rough patch and everyone needs to roll up their sleeves and go the extra mile. Nurses have been working, 110, 125% for a very long period.
She adds if healthcare settings want to see real change, the government will have to remove barriers for nurses coming from across Canada and abroad.
This nursing shortage is not something that's happened overnight. It's been forecasted for many, many years. And unfortunately, it's going to take time to get us out of it.
Now, Vancouver Coastal Health says the change in time, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., will remain in effect indefinitely, but they are hoping that they'll be able to change back to 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. for the closure as soon as possible. Zara Premji, CBC News, Vancouver.
Complaints are piling up in Vernon about the number of RVs parked on city streets. Housing advocates say it's just another sign of the growing affordability and housing crisis hitting the North Okanagan. The mayor is pushing off any discussion until next month. As Brady Strachan shows us, people living in their vehicles say they have nowhere else to go.
Robert Brown never thought he'd be living like this.
No, we're just trying to get by.
All of his possessions crammed into an old 30-foot motorhome, moving from place to place.
Scary. Scary. It's embarrassing.
Brown and his partner, Matthew Franchuk, came to Vernon a few weeks ago on a promise they could park their RV on private land. But that didn't pan out.
Even just a place to park this where we could have a little garden, have the dogs, we're quiet. We don't party, we don't have a bunch of people over. We just want a place to be.
Now they're among a growing number of people living in RVs and vans on city streets here. Municipal bylaws limit them to one spot for 48 hours. So they spend their days moving from one place to the next as they search for a permanent place to rent or live out of their motorhome. Outreach workers try to keep in touch and offer what support they can. That doesn't include housing, even temporary, because of the shortage here.
I have never seen it this bad. It's a combination of things. Inflation is massive. People's mortgages going up. We have staff that are struggling to be, and they're employed full time, and they're struggling to find an affordable place to live.
The city of Vernon says it's received numerous complaints about permanently parked RVs. A discussion on the issue at City Council has been deferred until September. And until that happens, Mayor Victor Cummings says he's not prepared to talk about it. Meanwhile, housing advocates say the situation is only getting worse for people pushed to the margins.
You know, it's 38 degrees out and you're living in an RV with no green space, nowhere to go. You're being shooed away constantly. You have to move your RV every 48 hours. It's not acceptable for a society that we live in. We can do better.
That's a sentiment Brown and Franchuk agree with.
And it's kind of like if you don't have that stability, if you don't have the home base, it's hard to move up from there.
Instead of moving up to some level of housing security, they're forced to move on once again. Brady Strachan, CBC News, Vernon.
One of Surrey Mayor Doug McCallum's most outspoken critics is walking away from municipal politics. Councillor Jack Hundal says he is not seeking re-election in this October's municipal election. Hundal has publicly pushed back against the mayor on several issues like the transition from the RCMP to Surrey Police, contention over ride-hailing services, and concerns about transparency at City Hall.
On council, I'd say there has been challenging times. You know, we go back and look at a time of when ride-sharing was being rolled out in the Lower Mainland, and you had a mayor that fought it tooth and nail all the way to court, using city resources for that. So, yeah, there have been some trying times, but I got to tell you though, the learning opportunities have been phenomenal. Just being able to take that knowledge and put it forth into something else could be something that one of my takeaways from it.
Hundal served with the Surrey RCMP for 25 years and was elected to City Council in 2018. Hundreds of people forced out of their homes by the Caramies Creek wildfire were able to go back home today. The 12-day order was lifted at noon, but residents still have to contend with an evacuation alert as wildfires continue to threaten the area. The Apex Fire Brigade says thanks to the combined efforts of several agencies, no homes or structures were damaged. The nearly 70-square-kilometer wildfire has been burning since July 29th. Johanna Wagstaffe, our meteorologist, joins us now with the forecast. Great news for those who were able to go back home, Joe. What are we dealing with in terms of wildfire danger right now?
We're now heading into that long, hot, dry stretch, Dan. This is our recent decades new pattern where we do get these long, hot, dry stretches. They end with thunderstorms, and then the heat builds back in. So we're in that heat building back in part of the pattern. And I want to show you the heat warnings that have been issued today for much of the province. That includes Metro Vancouver, Fraser Canyon, Fraser Valley, east side of Vancouver Island, Howe Sound. You can see inland sections all the way up the coastal areas, and then parts of the interior. That's where we'll see temperatures get close to the 40-degree mark over the next couple of days. Wanted to show you the bigger picture because the same sort of mini dome of heat, if you will, also extends to the east side of the Rockies and up into the Northwest Territories. So widespread heat warnings in place for Western Canada. This is a look at the current temperatures right now, 23 at YVR, but inland, we are in the high 20s today. Parts of the southern Okanagan in the mid to high 30s, Kelowna at a 34 right now. Add a couple more degrees on for tomorrow's forecast. So here we go, Wednesday and Thursday, that will be the peak of the heat where we'll approach those 40-degree temperatures. It does come with mainly blue skies. When this heat moves off Friday into Saturday, that's when we'll be worried for those lightning strikes again, but it'll also bring a little bit of relief as we head into the weekend for most of Western Canada. Temperatures still not looking to go back down to seasonal. We do have an above seasonal stretch to continue with a blocking pattern in the atmosphere, Dan. I'll break down the end of the heat coming up a little later on in the show.
Sounds good. Thank you, Joe.
You're welcome.
Running, jumping, dodging red and green turtle shells are just a few classic moves that fans of Super Mario will remember. But imagine playing Mario without being able to see him. It's an experience one visually impaired gamer in the Fraser Valley is sharing with others. John Mendoza brings us his story.
Yeah. No! Thank you, Shell. I am Jalen Berg. I have grown up with cone rod dystrophy, and it took me a while, but I figured out how to play Mario while blind. It's hard. I live in a world for people who can see better and farther than I can, and things are designed for those kinds of people. This is part of it. Can't read these little side things, so gotta look at each game individually, find the one that you want. So one big thing is color. My particular kind of disability, part of the package is partial color blindness. I don't see like models, I barely I register terrain. It's mostly just a bunch of moving blobs, a bunch of moving colored blobs. Backgrounds and enemies that are like similarly colored and like shaded can be hard to see. More specific hurdles, for instance, I'm assuming people see the entire screen when they play. I don't actually, my attention shifts around the screen and things happening on like the edge I generally miss, but you can make up for that with like knowing enemy patterns. And I never play games with the sound off because that audio element is so important. Koopa shell bouncing, you don't need to, I mean, that's a pretty basic example, right? It bounces, you hear the punk sound, and you don't need to see. That allows me to ignore whole sections of the screen because, well, my ears got me covered for that. Mario is one of those series that's really nice because oftentimes all the games will feel the same. Like they might not strictly be exactly the same, but they all feel the same, you know? The more people that can like easily enjoy video games, I think that is just the best thing for everyone, because then more people come in, you get more perspectives, you get more people to just, have fun with and talk about some of your favorite stuff. Like, yeah, let's go. Let's get accessibility into these things.
I gotta fire up the old 8-bit system. That is amazing. Always a lot of fun, Super Mario. Well done. And that story was by our CBC video producer, John Mendoza. Thousands of lives killed by toxic drugs. 6 years of a public health emergency, and still 6 people dying every single day in BC. After the break, we press a Liberal MP on what her government is doing to try to save more lives. Stick around. Thanks for joining our commercial-free live stream tonight. In Montreal, a country music festival known as the Lasso Fest took place last weekend. Thousands of fans came out to support their favorite, and we sent reporter Rowan Kennedy to rope in this story.
The spotlight is on Quebec band Five Roses. They say it's a rare treat to be playing in Montreal.
Country is a bit of an emerging, or at least new country is a bit of an emerging genre of music here in Montreal. So we're beyond excited to be playing here and on home turf.
It's a festival that was 3 years in the making, delayed because of the pandemic. Lasso Fest made it a point to book local and diverse artists.
We wanted to make sure that it wasn't just 4 white guys on stage, every single time. So we had the majority of our artists yesterday were women,
Organizers say holding this festival in Montreal was a gamble because the city's not known for its country music scene, but after some research, this organizer says the market for country music is here.
Montreal's the second strongest streaming country market in Canada behind Toronto, which is, you tell people that and they're surprised. But from our research, we knew that people were listening to a lot of country.
Jean Drapeau Park is filled with stomping boots, people ready to enjoy some music, all while wearing their cowboy hats.
You got the whole thing. You got the cowboy hat.
This is a $3 from Dollarama, so I don't want a $40 hat for me here, so I'm a cheap guy.
It's in my blood. I absolutely love country music. It's what I listen to day in, day out on the job, and not for anything that I have outlaw tattooed on me.
All day, every day, boys. All day, every day.
Who are you looking forward to today?
Oh, Luke Bryan for sure. Maybe a little bit of Riley Green.
After COVID, we need more festivals, more outdoor things, so very exciting.
As we told you earlier, BC has surpassed yet another grim mark in its ongoing toxic drug crisis. Since the public health emergency was declared in 2016, 10,000 people have been killed in our province from poison drugs. In June, there was a 17% drop in deaths from this time last year. The numbers from July have not been finalized, but a significant number of people died last month. So far this year, BC has lost 1,095 people to poison drugs. That's 6 people a day in 2022. And advocates are again frustrated with the lack of progress.
Change little and little will change, and that's why I'm angry. We're not doing enough and it's killing people. For years, it's been a little bit more than an incremental changes, pilot project here, a few treatment beds there. Nothing substantial has changed to our laws, to our policies, and it's leading to so many more deaths. I regularly give talks in schools and youth organizations. Young people tell me that they're using alone. The services that support them don't meet their needs of where they're at, if they exist at all. That sends a message to young people that we don't really care. Young people today, whether they use drugs or not, feeling this way breaks my heart and makes me angry. One teen came up to me after a recent talk at a local high school. And he thanked me for saying that drug users aren't bad people. My dad died of a drug overdose in 2020, but I don't tell people that. He wasn't a bad person. He was my dad, and he loved me. That's a 16-year-old boy dealing with that. Stigma is a direct result of our policies. We can't expect things to get better if we continue to do nothing about them.
That was Guy Felicella, a peer councillor with the BC Centre on Substance Use, speaking today during the BC Coroner's update on the toxic drug crisis, which he now does monthly. For more on this story, we're now joined by Vancouver Centre Liberal MP Dr. Hedy Fry. Doctor, first of all, what do you make of yet another grim report from the coroner on the number of people killed?
What I can say is it's devastating. And I think that what it is telling us, and a lot of the things that we are currently doing are not working as well as they could. And so we have to keep reassessing, and we have to keep talking to the communities involved so that they can tell us what actually works. I mean, it's kind of always great when you follow the science and you say, this is what we're going to do. And it turns out that it actually doesn't necessarily work for people on the ground. Yeah.
Given, though, that so many lives have been lost, so many people killed, what is you doing specifically to push your federal government to try to save more lives here? And the sentiment we keep hearing, particularly from the chief coroner, again, she said it today, is that a regulated, safe supply is needed. So what are you doing to make that happen from the federal side?
That's been something I've been pushing for the longest time, because it is.
So why hasn't it happened yet, Dr. Fry, with respect?
Because it's difficult. For instance, 2 weeks ago, I had a meeting with Carolyn Bennett and the community at the art gallery. We sat around, we had a round table, and people were telling us that some of the things that we're doing work, but a lot of them don't actually work on the ground, because what you have to be is where people are. You can't expect people to come to where you want them to be. And so one of the most important things that we are working on right now, that happened about a month ago, was to start using what are known as SUAP grants so that doctors and others can prescribe fentanyl, because that's what people want now. And we're no longer using injectables. A lot of people are using inhalants. So we need to kind of figure out what the drug of choice is, and how do we stop the person that's supplying the illegal tainted drugs to people to stop them so that we can give them safe supply.
What is then the holdup to get the powder, to get the things that you are hearing the community says will work? Where is the choke point here? Is it the province? Is it the federal government? Is it the city? Where is the choke point?
It's all three working together. Singing out of the same hymn book, working with the community, doing the things that the community thinks that are going to help. So that's the challenge. We're doing it together.
If I may, Dr. Fry, part of the issue, it seems, is that it's not being done fast enough. 10,000 people have been killed. We're still losing thousands of people a year, up to 6 people a day. So why isn't it moving faster? Like, it's clearly, people know how urgent it is.
I think we all understand the urgency, and so some of the people getting the drugs have been a problem to date. Global supply has been low. We've not been able to find enough of the drugs. So we're looking now at people like, Dr. Perry Kendall, who used to be the chief public health officer for British Columbia at one time, and people like Dr. Marty Schechter, who are now looking at seeing if we can manufacture it here in Canada. Because, this is not, we live and hear and we know that it's a large number of people are dying, but this is a global phenomenon. And it's getting worse because people are anxious and scared, and the mental health comorbidities that are coming with the COVID and monkeypox and everything hitting people all at once has moved a lot of people to have, really greater need for substances to help them cope. And
lastly, Dr. Fry, if I may, you say you speak with Carolyn Bennett, a fellow physician, and the Minister of Mental Health and Addictions. Do you speak with the Prime Minister about this, and does he understand how bad this is here?
He does, but he is cautious about and not wanting to do anything unless we have the province and the city on side. Not wanting to do everything unless we do it in a manner in which there are. It's like almost research is being gathered while we're doing it to see what works and what doesn't work, and what are the outcomes of this on populations. That kind of thing. That's what he wants us to keep doing. He's very much on side with this. Has always been from the word go. And yes, he and I talk about it.
All right. Thank you for Senator MP Dr. Hetty Fry. We appreciate your time. Thank you for joining us.
Not at all, Dan. Thank you.
To another ongoing health crisis and a cautionary tale from a Canadian man forced into mandatory quarantine after an Alaskan cruise. Dave Garlick tested positive for COVID on the ship and had to isolate for several days in a downtown Vancouver hotel once they docked. As the CBC's Dale Molnar explains, he wants his potentially pricey story to be a lesson for other travelers.
I think that if you're going to go on a cruise, you're taking a very calculated risk.
Dave Garlick and his wife, Linda Chakmak, were having a great time checking out the scenery, including glaciers, on their Alaskan cruise last month. But on the second and last day of the trip, Garlick, who was fully vaccinated, tested positive for COVID and had to isolate in a room on the ship. Then, when they docked in Vancouver, he had to isolate in a room at the airport Sheridan.
My wife calls it a writer's retreat. She went online, found 2 writing pads for me, sent them to me. They were there within a day. So I had 4 pens and 2 writing pads and 2 good books to read. So it really wasn't a bad experience for me.
Garlick is retired, so he says it wasn't that big of an inconvenience. He says the hotel treated him well and says the cruise line will reimburse him for whatever the trip insurance won't cover of the $5,700 he had to pay up front. But he does suggest others who can't afford to get quarantined should be prepared.
And if people want to pretend that COVID's gone, then they're really pretending.
While epidemiologist Colin Furness agrees we have to protect against COVID variants coming into the country, he says quarantining people in hotels just puts others in a hotel at risk.
I don't think that quarantine, the way we're doing it, is actually having that much benefit. It would be better if we had one consistent rule, very consistent rule that said, if you've been traveling, you've got to wear a respirator mask outside in public for 10 days.
According to a public health agency spokesperson, Garlick would have had the option to stay at a federal government designated facility where all meals and Wi-Fi would be covered. Garlick opted for what he believed was a more comfortable alternative. This travel agent says if you are going on a cruise, make sure you're insured.
Have your medical insurance all purchased for the whole duration that you're going. Also the cancellation insurance for the whole cost of your trip, because not only is it the cancellation insurance, it's interruption as well.
And she says check with the cruise line to make sure they will cover costs not covered by insurance. The government recommends you make quarantine plans in advance of arrival back to Canada. Despite the unexpected quarantine, Garlick is still supportive of the government's safety measures. This experience hasn't put the couple off traveling. They're now planning a trip to Scotland. Dale Molnar, CBC News, Windsor.
Inflation has eased at least a little since its high of 8.1% in June. Costs are not quick to fall, though, but we look at the overall impact of lower prices at the pumps. That's next.
A year ago, housing prices were sky high. It cost so much to buy a house in Vancouver that most people simply couldn't afford it. Now, even with interest rates coming down a bit, the combination of historically high rates and tight money is beginning to force down the cost of housing. Joyce Trammell reports.
John McLaughlin moved back to Vancouver last fall. He paid $235,000 for this 3-bedroom house. Today it is worth $60,000 less, and its value might still be going down.
I like the house. The area is one that I always wanted to live in, and I could afford it at the time, albeit marginally. And as long as the economy doesn't play any, doesn't complete havoc with either my income or my wife's income, we will be able to continue to afford it.
The loss of an income can be disastrous. Selling the house can be impossible. If it has lost so much value, it is worth less than the mortgage on it. Real estate agents won't list it, and nobody will buy. The boom peaked with last year's high interest rates. Demand dropped off. Prices began to fall, especially the price of land. A building lot now sells for half of what it sold last year. Lower prices mean young couples looking for their first home are now buying again. This 3-bedroom house in Port Coquitlam would have cost $150,000 a year ago. The butchers paid $93,000.
It really scared us to all of a sudden be this much in debt, but we're happy we did.
And we had it all worked out so that although we both are working, that we could manage on one salary, making the payments.
Mm-hmm. Has it proven to be that way so far?
Well, how many payments have we made? We've made 2 payments, so...
So far, not too bad.
The Vancouver market is now slowly getting back to normal. That's fine for the families who bought before the boom or are buying now. The families who bought at the peak can only wonder if and when they will recoup their losses. Georges Tramel, CBC News, Vancouver.
Inflation in Canada eased slightly last month. Statistics Canada reports consumer prices increased 7.6% in July compared to a year ago. That's down slightly from 8.1% in June. And that drop was led by a decline in the price of gas. The CBC's Nisha Patel has more.
After months of pain at the pumps, the cost of filling up is down more than 20 cents a litre. But these drivers are feeling little relief.
It used to go $30 for 2 weeks, now it's $30 for 5 days. So that definitely hurts a lot.
It's still at a price where you just can't afford it.
I had to sell my truck and buy a smaller car.
Meanwhile, Canadians paid almost 10% more for groceries last month compared to the same time last year. Natural gas jumped 43%. Hotels and motels spiked 48%. For Christine Nelson-Didich, one solution to soaring costs is to stop spending as much. She manages an online Buy Nothing group in Winnipeg.
I've gotten household items and basically anything you can imagine people have asked for and been lucky enough to receive.
She's seen an interest in the group jump alongside the rising cost of living. Many members are looking for food and basic necessities.
The Buy Nothing movement is like a safety net for your community.
A safety net needed by more Canadians every day because paychecks are just not keeping up with inflation.
That means that every month Canadians are being made worse off by price increases.
Prices for many commodities and shipping have come down, and there are signals inflation seems to have peaked, but it's still uncomfortably high, something consumers will have to bear for many months.
What we can hope is that slowly price growth retreats to 2%, but it doesn't mean that prices overall are going to fall back to levels that we saw pre-pandemic.
The Bank of Canada governor responded to the inflation data, today writing in the National Post, "It's by raising borrowing costs in the short term that we will bring inflation down for the long term." So economists expect more interest rate hikes are on the table when the central bank meets next month. Nisha Patel, CBC News, Toronto.
A parliamentary committee looking into allegations of political interference in the investigation of the 2020 mass shooting in Nova Scotia. During testimony in Ottawa today, a senior Mountie repeated claims that RCMP Commissioner Brenda Lucki tried to intervene in the probe on behalf of Ottawa. The CBC's Catherine Tunney has the latest.
She didn't seem to appreciate or recognize the importance of maintaining the integrity of an investigation.
Allegations were once again lobbed at the top Mountie today, this time calling into doubt Commissioner Brenda Lucki's judgment and her involvement in the investigation of the 2020 mass shooting in Nova Scotia, with one of the top officers in the province at the time accusing her of knowingly interfering in an open police case.
I do believe that the commissioner, as a seasoned police officer, would understand that certain information should be protected.
Today's parliamentary committee was triggered after Chief Superintendent Darren Campbell's handwritten notes were made public. Notes about a now infamous teleconference between Commissioner Brenda Lucki and Nova Scotia officials, just days after the tragedy. In them, Campbell claims Lucki said she promised the federal government that information about the types of weapons used by the killer would be made public, and that this was connected to an upcoming gun control announcement. Campbell has argued that releasing that information would have jeopardized an international investigation, a risk he accuses Lucky of overlooking.
The commissioner was upset. The commissioner made me feel as if I was stupid and I didn't seem to understand the importance of why this information was important to go out.
A Nova Scotia colleague, also on that teleconference, backed Campbell up today.
My takeaway, my experience from that conversation was the risks seem irrelevant.
Lucky has since apologized for her conduct in that meeting, but has been adamant that there was no political interference.
Let me be clear, I did not interfere in the investigation around this tragedy.
And she has chalked this controversy up to a misunderstanding. Conservatives say they could still call for Brenda Lucki to resign. For now, MPs on the committee are asking for more government witnesses, including the chief of staff of the then public safety minister, as they probe whether political interference played a role in the investigation. Catherine Tunney, CBC News, Ottawa.
CBC's French language service, Radio-Canada, has news today about Cardinal Marc Ouellet. The program Enquête is reporting his name is included in a new class action suit against the Archdiocese of Quebec. The civil lawsuit represents more than 100 people who allege they were sexually assaulted by people working for the diocese since 1940. Ouellet is among 88 members of the clergy facing accusations. The woman making the allegation against Ouellet was an intern from 2008 and 2010 when he was Archbishop of Quebec. Her lawyer says Ouellet allegedly hugged her, massaged her shoulders, or stroked her back down to her buttocks. The cardinal is not facing any criminal accusations at this time. The Quebec Archdiocese says it's aware of the allegations, but so far is not commenting. Ouellet is sometimes mentioned as a possible successor to Pope Francis. News that Bell Media ended its contract with veteran journalist and host Lisa Laflamme continues to make headlines a day after. The now former anchor of CTV National News says she was blindsided when informed of the change at the end of June. Bell Media says it made the decision due to, quote, changing viewer habits. But the move has left many confused about Laflamme's sudden departure, and others blaming her firing on a combination of ageism and sexism. Our colleague Arthi Pohl spoke with Andrea Gunraj with the Canadian Women's Foundation earlier today.
Is there now an additional barrier there? Is this setting an example that certainly isn't one we would hope for?
Well, you know, I think anytime these kinds of examples come up, people express to the Canadian Women's Foundation, we're concerned about what this means. Are things getting worse? There's reasons why people feel these ways. But I think then those of us who are in positions of some authority, some power, some leadership, we have to take this seriously, and we have to try to make our workplaces better.
Laflamme's successor, Omar Sajidina, takes the reins on the desk September 5th. Results are coming in after Republicans in Wyoming voted today to decide if Liz Cheney will run as their congresswoman this fall. The answer is no if former U.S. President Donald Trump has his way.
2 months from now, the people of Wyoming are going to tell her, Liz, you're fired. Get out of here. Get out of here.
Cheney voted to impeach Trump while he was president, and she's vice chair of the January 6th committee. She's being challenged today by a candidate backed by the former president. Another candidate backed by Trump is Sarah Palin, a former vice presidential candidate. She's running to replace a representative from Alaska who recently died. Mexico is turning to Germany and the U.S. for help rescuing 10 miners. It's asking 2 companies for their opinions on how to extract the workers. They've been trapped underground for nearly 2 weeks. A tunnel collapsed 13 days ago during excavation work. It triggered flooding throughout the mine. A rescue team was about to descend into the mine on Sunday, but the waters came rushing back. Darkness and debris in the shaft are making that rescue operation even harder. At 6:43, a live sunny look at Olympic Plaza in Whistler. A heat warning now covers much of our province. Johanna will tell us how hot it will get and where in her BC-wide forecast after this.
Hi everyone, I'm Ricky. I am a Chinese singing actor.
And I am Hillary Sims. I am a professional trombonist, and this is my fiance.
We're engaged.
Lead us to a place, guide us with your grace.
We met at Yale University.
For our masters.
For our masters. We were both music students, and yeah, that's where we met, 2017.
So Ricky, tell me about what happened to your career when you went to China.
It all started with 2018. I finished my first year at Yale. We were at Aspen Music Festival together, and then I got a call, just said, hi, hey, Mr. Ricky, this is a TV show called Super Vocal. That we're about to start shooting in China. It's all about classical singer and musical theater singers. And that's like the first ever TV show like that in China. And that turned out to be a sensational TV show and event. It kind of went viral in China.
Yeah.
So
It went viral to the point where we're walking down the streets in Toronto and we get recognized because of him. When we got engaged, I put it on Facebook, obviously, and like shared it with friends and family, and it was really exciting. But all of a sudden, Ricky's in China, I'm in the US, and he texted me, he was like, what did you do? I was like, what do you mean, what did I do? And he was like, we're going viral in China. I was like, what do you mean we're going viral in China? There was this little, almost like ET Canada video clip of all of these pictures that were taken off of my Facebook of the two of us. Anyways, by the end of the day, this video clip got 1.6 billion views.
Billion with a B?
Billion with a B, basically saying Ricky's engaged, he's taken ladies, and it's just the two of our faces plastered all over Chinese social media.
Yeah. Do you have millions of young Chinese women angry at you or something?
I certainly hope not.
No, I was worried about that, but like people gave us their blessings and they wish us.
Yeah, they're pretty happy for you.
Yeah, they're very happy for us.
The pandemic shut down a lot of programs for kids. And even though restrictions are largely gone now, some of those programs are still struggling. Recruitment is slow and the number of children signing up is low. And as Andrew Wilds reports, it has those programs concerned about their very survival.
What? Mark.
This is the Lord Selkirk Robert Fraser Memorial Pipe Band. It's been an opportunity for kids in Winnipeg to play music for free for 65 years. Shows like this are how the band attracts new members, like 12-year-old Spencer Roberts.
They used to practice near our house, and we heard them playing one day, so we checked them out online.
The pandemic drove them inside, stopping all recruitment for 2 years. Now, organizers are worried about sustaining the tradition.
In 5 years, as the current members of the band are graduating, we're going to have a void of new members. So we could be in line for a very small band if we don't get members starting out soon.
Organizers with other groups in Winnipeg say kids have been slow to return to many free music programs now that they have the opportunity. They say not only do these programs keep kids out of trouble, they help them to discover their gifts. Alyssa Vrew started in April, and already she's playing Happy Birthday.
The biggest lesson I think that comes out of this program is that I can, because people come in here not being able to DJ or play drums or play guitar or bang on a piano or whatever. They don't know how, and then they learn how to wiggle their fingers, or they learn how to strum a pick, or they learn how to twist some knobs, and suddenly they go from I can't to I can.
This is Desmond William Young in 2018. Now William Young's playing gigs and giving back as a volunteer.
This program has allowed me to perform concerts and allowed me to meet important people.
Organizers of the pipe band say they provide pipes and uniforms. And no, kids don't need to be Scottish to join. Andrew Wiles, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Meteorologist Johanna Wagstaffe joins us now with the forecast. See, Joe, you owe me $2. You don't need to be Scottish to play the pipes.
Well, there you go, Dan. I can, music is so important.
Mm-hmm.
And did I make this up, or do we both play the saxophone, Dan?
Yeah, but that's between you and I.
Yeah, yeah, right.
No, hang on, let's clarify.
That was not widely...
Alto, tenor, bass, or soprano?
That's right. Tenor.
I see, I was alto. So you had to heft that thing heavier than a dead priest around. Mine was a little easier. Yeah. Yeah, I'm still reaping the rewards of that one. Anyway, one day we will have to share our talents to the world, but not today. Lord, we're not ready.
Not today. Today, I'll just show you the current temperatures. Yeah. But yes, amazing what youth music programs can do. 34 and through Kelowna right now. I wanted to show you the big picture because we have a couple of pockets of heat. As I mentioned earlier, we're getting our heat in BC, Alberta, and the Northwest Territories from the U.S. Southwest. You can see that pocket down through places like Sacramento and Texas. Taking you through our forecast daily highs because it really is Wednesday and Thursday that we will get into our hottest temperatures. Widespread heat warnings in place. And yes, Metro Vancouver is under a heat warning. Officials, asking residents to think about those most vulnerable over the next couple of days. Check on your neighbors. Those overnight lows will be up in the high teens. This is our third heat wave for Metro Vancouver this season, but this season really has just started in July. So we're hitting our average number of 30-degree days for the summer, but really hitting that in a much shorter time frame. Notice that cool down that comes for the weekend. We will be watching for accompanying lightning strikes as we do get that high pressure move out and marine air move in, but that's not until Friday. And we may see some showers here in Metro Vancouver Friday morning. Again, watching for that lightning Friday and Saturday in the interior, hot and dry until then. Okay, breaking down the long range forecast, high 20s over the next couple of days for YVR. Inland, low 30s. Fraser Valley will be hitting the 35 plus mark. There's that cool down you can see for Friday. So slight risk of some showers, a little more comfortable. That goes for the weekend as well. I've got to tell you, a lot of uncertainty in the weekend forecast, a lot of divergence in the models, if you will. So there is a chance we could see some showers this weekend. That would be nice. At this point, though, dry through the long range, Dan.
Okay. We'll keep an eye on it. It's sort of almost like jazz. You don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, notes all over the place, highs and lows. Yeah, exactly the same.
Solos nobody wants to play. Yeah.
Exactly.
Thanks, Joe.
You're welcome.
Not just for your backyard barbecue, cornhole is now a professional sport. So are you good enough to compete on the global circuit? We're going to meet a Newfoundlander who is. Stick around.
It has been over 3 years since a team of international scientists have been able to come to Milne Fjord. They've been coming here, at one of the northernmost points of land on the planet, to study what was one of the most intact glacial systems of its kind. Nestled in between Milne Glacier and the Milne Ice Shelf was an epishelf lake, a body of fresh water floating on top of seawater that was naturally dammed by the ice shelf. Now, preliminary data collected from Milne Fjord confirms what scientists feared following the 2020 calving event, that the epishelf lake drained.
Camera's got it.
Alex Forrest, a limnologist at the University of California, Davis, hypothesizes that over time, this likely means that the year-round freshwater lake ice will eventually give way to seasonal periods of open seawater, further degrading the ice shelf and the glacial tongue faster.
The concern from a polar scientist point of view is that once you remove these ice shelves from the system, they provide a buttressing effect. So basically you have a glacier that's up on land, it comes down to the ocean, and then it's pinned by the ice shelf itself. Now you break away that ice shelf, and all of a sudden the resistance to flow for the glacier is disappeared. Fortuitously, we managed to capture a record of the entire drainage event of the lake. And that is something that is completely unprecedented. So what these instruments can tell us is how the transition happened.
Despite the silver lining of data, the disappearance of the Epichelf Lake represents an even greater loss beyond the confines of the towering fjord walls.
You know, when we made predictions 20 years ago that these ice shelves will last for another 50, and then all of a sudden 20 years later, they've all but disappeared. So we're losing opportunities to understand how the cryosphere is changing. And so as a community, we need to be understanding how this system is changing in order to understand the impacts that are coming down the road towards us.
Although the Epichelf Lake is gone, for scientists like Alex Forrest, Milne Fjord will still provide an opportunity to study the final years of a collapsing Arctic ecosystem. And with the Arctic warming between 2 and 3 times faster than the rest of the planet, having a better understanding of what happens here will not only better inform what the future of the Arctic may look like, but the Antarctic as well. Dustin Pitar, CBC News, Milne Fjord.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell. Here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox. Stream your favorite CBC dramas or comedies 24/7 on demand on the CBC Gem app. Plus, you can live stream CBC Vancouver News. Check it out at gem.cbc.ca. And never miss a special programming series or contest. Subscribe to CBC Vancouver's e-newsletter at cbc.ca/Vancouver inbox and keep connected with us.
It's a summer pastime at cabins and campsites across Canada and around the world. But the game of cornhole isn't just for the backyard or the beach. There's also a professional international league. Chrissy Holmes has the story on a Newfoundlander who is among the game's rising stars.
Hi, my name is Dan Burritt. I'm Newfoundland's first professional cornhole player. We're here at the Legion in Pleasantville, so for the last 2 years we've had a league here. They've given myself and Albert a place to practice. Next week we'll be attending the Europe Open in the Netherlands. So, just lucky enough to have a spot to come practice in the evenings and on the weekends.
Dion, we gotta back up here. How the heck do you become a professional cornhole player? Like, how did that happen?
It's amazing, actually. I never ever thought it would come to this. You know, we have a bunch of people in the league that come out and enjoy it and that kind of stuff, and everybody plays in their backyard, and it's becoming a big thing. The sport has grown like you wouldn't believe. And in April, we had noticed that there's a Canadian Open that was happening in Niagara Falls. We thought it would be a great idea to have a bunch of people from the league go up there and have fun with it.
So Dion Cruiser here now with first bag. Dion is in.
Then when it was all said and done, they made an announcement that I was the last Canadian standing, and with that became a professional contract for the following year.
Dion will come back in. He's just deadly up the middle this morning.
So on September 15th, I'll get a contract from the ACL, the American Cornhole League, and compete against the best in the world for prize money.
But back home now, you know everybody's going to want to be taking you on.
Yeah, I get a lot of I get a lot of requests and stuff.
Where do you hope your career is going to go with this?
You know, for me, I've taken it one step at a time. I actually read somewhere that Matt Guy, who's considered one of the greatest of all time, has probably made a little over $1 million US playing cornhole. Octane has sponsored me, and they sent me 3 or 4 sets of bags, and I'm just glad that I got $200 worth of bags.
Last one, airmail. Here we go.
Oh! But, you know something?
It's important to be a good loser, too, isn't it?
Yes.
Cornhole legend in the making. Thanks for being with us tonight on CBC Vancouver News at 6. You can watch this newscast on YouTube, Facebook, and of course our website, cbc.ca/BC. Your next local news is tonight at 11 o'clock with Michelle Gassoub, right after the National. Take care.